The MLP franchise has been around for 43 years, and over that period of time we've seen a lot of stories and characters. And while not every single story or characters I remember so fondly or remember at all, today I just want to explore the concepts and characters that would be cool to see again in MLP. So, let's begin. Let's begin with Ponylife. Yes, you heard that right, Ponylife, probably the black sheep of the MLP franchise, and while yeah, Ponylife was a little bit weird or in other times a frustrating series to watch, I'll be lying if I didn't say that it had some great ideas and characters, but to choose one is pretty hard. For example, I could say the Wildsiders because, yeah, I like these three. I like Lightning Chill's personality and tone, or Echo's cute and comedic moments, or even Sugar Snap's more composed and responsible attitude. But that's not the only thing I like about these three, but also their species. While Lightning Chill's species has already been used in Allura and G5, I honestly would love to see a peacock or bat species. Because just imagine the cool and creative things that you could do in the show with these species, like for example a city of peacocks who are big fans of fashion, high life and expensive things, or a secret bat town which is located in a cave and the bats being shy, oblivious, but also being fans of fruit and juice. But of course these are not the only characters in Ponylife which would be cool to see again, because we also have the alternative ponies, also known by Derek, Matt and Matt.
Say what?
These three were supporting characters that every once in a while they would join the main six wacky antics in Ponylife. These three like to follow trends and popular things, but what makes them so memorable, at least to me, is their personalities. Because when you think of characters that like to follow trends, you expect energetic characters just like Pip. But these three weren't like that, and actually they acted more like Mutt from G4, while also being pretty charismatic and fun characters. But how should these characters return? Well, that could be a little bit tricky because of how their personalities are, but I think that the best way to reintroduce them would be as small background characters that every once in a while could interact with our main characters. That would be a good way to reintroduce them, but I'm more surprised that these characters didn't come back in G5. Because think about it, 3 ponies who follow trends and like everything popular, in my opinion, would fit in G5 perfectly. And hopefully we could see them again at some point in MLP, but while Ponylife is not remembered so fondly, the next generation is. Of course I'm talking about G4, but now G4 is tricky because choosing a character or something specific is almost impossible, because sure, I could say the main 6, the main background ponies, the princesses, villains, other small characters and even some comic characters. And sure, it would be nice to see all of these characters return at some point, but I think what I would like to see again out of G4 is the more obscure things, like for example, the Umbram, which were the original ponies of Shadows, and I would love to see the Umbram return not only as a species, but also the concept of shadow ponies, which in my opinion was a cool concept that sadly only got used in one episode and some few comics. And the Umbram are not the only species that I would love to see again in MLP, because we also have the deer, the reindeer, the hippogriffs and of course the Kirin. Species that weren't that popular or that only got some few appearances, and the best thing is that you don't have to change anything from these species to reintroduce them. But again, when talking about G4 is tricky because there's a lot of things that fans would like to see back in the franchise, and hopefully one day we will. But sadly this next generation is not going to be that lucky. Of course I'm talking about G5, and G5 is also quite difficult because G5 had a lot of good ideas for characters and concepts, like for example Opaline, the elemental dragons, the sea ponies, the Aloracorns and even the main 6. And while I would love to see all of these characters have a second chance at some point, I think the ones that deserve it the most are the G5 background ponies, specifically the main ones, like Posey, Rufus, Windy, the Pipsqueaks, Flare, Onyx, Dahlia and Fifi, because all of these characters, despite being background characters, had a lot of personality, or in the case of Posey, a really nice redemption story from her being a prick to someone who opened up to someone and became the friend of Pip. And honestly, I wouldn't mind the same treatment to go to the other background characters, like have other stories where we explore maybe the relationship or career of Onyx, or what about the rivalry between Posey and Dahlia? But of course this is not necessary, and if we see them again, I think that the best way to reintroduce them would be as background characters that sometimes interact with our main characters. Because whether you like or hate G5, I think everyone can agree that these characters were one of the best parts of G5 and that they deserve a second chance. And this could also be said for our next generation, which is G3. Now G3 was actually pretty easy to decide what needs to come back, and of course I'm talking about the greatest G3 character ever, a character that captivated all G3 fans and me, and this character is of course Thistle Whistle. And if you don't know who Thistle Whistle was, she was a secondary character in G3 and she was introduced in the Friends Are Never Far Away movie. Thistle as a character was charismatic, shy, and sometimes she could be really stubborn.
We have lots of fun right here on Butterfly Island.
Well, it does sound like fun. If we all go together, maybe it won't seem far.
So send postcards. I'm staying here.
What?
But at its core, she always wanted the best for her friends. But what made Thistle so unique as a character was, well, her whistles. Yep, Thistle sometimes would whistle instead of talk, and this was what I love about her, and while yeah, she isn't the only character where her name reflects a quirk, Thistle is the only one who wasn't a one-off joke or a background character. And if I'm honest, I would love to see Thistle come back to the show, not only to reintroduce her to the fandom, but also because she still has great comedic potential. And a good way to reintroduce her would be either in a special or in an episode, beginning as a one-off character but then becoming a more prominent character. And while Thistle nowadays has been partially forgotten, hopefully one day we'll see her again, or at least have a new toy of her. I also wouldn't be mad at that, but we still have one more generation, which is of course G1, the show that began everything. So what concepts or characters can return in the future? Well, in my opinion, everything, beginning with the characters. And while yes, there's been some G1 character reference in other generations, something that would be interesting to see in MLP is the reintroduction of these characters, maybe as secondary characters or background characters, but in my opinion, why not make them the protagonist of their own show? Because yeah, this not only would be a great way to reintroduce them, but also to reintroduce the world of G1 to a new generation of fans. And maybe explore new things that we didn't see in the original show, like for example the growth of our main character's friendship, just like in G4. Gusty's rise from an irresponsible and cocky pony to being the hero of Equestria, or how life was in the Dark Ages when Grogar was terrorizing ponies, and even explore the connection between the pony world and the human world. There's a lot that you could do with the G1 world, or with the concept of this world. And why not introduce new stories into the G1 lore, like for example how a young Celeste and Luna became alicorns and exploring how their relationship was early on, or how Opaline turned into a villain, or why not introduce returning characters into the G1 lore, like for example Kibitz and Inkwell. There's a lot that you could do with these generations, which I feel not only would help with the old versus new fan situation we have nowadays, but also to explore more stories and characters in MLP. But of course, what do you guys think? What things would you want to see come back into the franchise, and how would you implement them into the show or comics? Leave it down in the comments. And as always, remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing for more MLP videos like this. And remember to take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video.